Hi everybody, this is Joshua Steele from Anglican Compass, here to do just a really quick Facebook Live video about 3 things that you need to know if you're going to use the Book of Common Prayer on a daily basis. Alright, so we get questions all the time about the Book of Common Prayer, which is also commonly referred to as the BCP or the prayer book. Questions like, which Book of Common Prayer do I get? Because there's quite a few of them out there. And then a lot of questions related to just how do I use this thing, because it's not the most user-friendly book. Depending on what page or section of the BCP you open to, you might find yourself getting confused really quickly, and you're not alone, right? So I just want to give you 3 things that you should really know if you're going to use the BCP on a daily basis on your own. The first thing is that the Book of Common Prayer is designed to be a comprehensive service book. So that means that if you're using it on a daily basis, there's a ton of it that you won't use. All right? Let me show you what I mean using the ACNA's 2019 Book of Common Prayer as a reference point. Okay, so I'm going to scroll down so that we can see the table of contents. All right, I've highlighted what are going to be the hot spots that you're going to use all the time if you're using it on a daily basis. But some of the stuff that you're not going to use if you're just using it on a daily basis are going to be the Holy Communion liturgies, baptism liturgies, all the services that a pastor would do, like weddings, funerals, ministering to the sick, Episcopal services, which are services that a bishop would lead, so that's like an ordination service or installing the head pastor of a church. And then you're not going to use the special liturgies of Lent and Holy Week very frequently either. Okay? So that's the first thing that you should know, is that if you're going to use the BCP on a daily basis, there's a ton of it that you won't use very frequently. The second thing is that there are 4 hotspots that you're going to use all the time. All right, and I've highlighted those in the table of contents here. So the first hotspot is the daily office section. Okay, that's going to contain the prayer services that you're actually going to use throughout the day. So it's going to be your bread and butter, your starting point. Okay, so there are 4 prayer services: morning prayer, midday prayer, evening prayer, and then Compline, which is designed for use like right before bed. And then the family prayer section that you see there right below those, which starts on page 67, that contains like shorter versions of those 4 prayer services. So it's especially helpful if you're super busy, if you have small children. But again, it's the same 4 times to pray throughout the day: morning, midday, early evening, and then late evening right before bed. So the daily office section is going to be the one that you begin with if you're using the Book of Common Prayer on a daily basis, right? The other sections that you're going to find yourself using are going to involve the things that you plug in to those prayer services, okay? So I've got the Psalter highlighted there. That's another name for the Book of Psalms. So books of common prayer frequently contain the entire book of Psalms because of how often Psalms are used in the various worship services of the Anglican Church. Okay, so it has all 150 Psalms. So if you're ever assigned a reading from Psalms, you can use the translation of the Book of Psalms that's provided right there in the Book of Common Prayer. I won't go over all the details of why it's a separate translation, but it's particularly useful for when a group of people is saying the Psalms out loud. The translations are done with that use in mind. Okay, so that's the first section, or the second section that you're going to use, is the Book of Psalms. The third one is the Collects of the Christian Year, which in the ACNA's prayer book starts on page 598. The collects are these written prayers that are sort of like summary prayers designed for use in a prayer service. Okay, so one explanation of the name is that they collect the people's prayers and sort of summarize them and offer them up to God. So the Christian year has various seasons like Advent, Lent, Eastertide, which we just began right now. And every Sunday of the Christian year, along with all the major feast days and holy days, so like Ash Wednesday, Maundy Thursday, etc., they all have a collect assigned to them. So you're going to use the collects of the Christian year to take you through the Christian year. And there's a place in each of the prayer services from the daily office that says the collect of the day. And when you get to that point in the prayer service, you're going to turn to the collects of the Christian year. You're going to find either that day's feast day or the collect for the previous Sunday, which gets used for the whole following week usually. and you're going to pray that collect of the day and then jump back into the prayer service. Okay, so you're going to use the collects of the Christian year pretty frequently, and I would suggest just leaving a bookmark in that section that sort of keeps track of where you are in the Christian year. We'll go over how to figure out what liturgical date it is in a later video, but that's all I want to say about that for now. And then finally, the last hotspot section that you're going to find yourself using all the time is the daily office lectionary that I have highlighted there. That begins on page 734 in the ACNA's 2019 Book of Common Prayer. Put simply, the daily office lectionary tells you what scripture passages you're going to read for that day. Okay, so let's jump there. Actually, let me show you what that looks like real quick. I'll jump down. I've got all my bookmarks here. Okay. So let's pop to the daily office lectionary. Okay, so if you go to page 734 in the ACNA's prayer book, it starts off by giving you a 1-month cycle of Psalms. If you want to work your way through the entire book of Psalms every month, then you can follow along as indicated here. But then the majority of the daily office lectionary are these monthly tables. Okay, they give you on the inside, so in these columns right here, they give you the Psalms assigned for each day if you want to go through the book of Psalms every 60 days instead of every 30 days. So that's less reading per day. All right. And then it also gives you the first lesson and the second lesson for morning prayer, and then on the right-hand side for evening prayer. Okay. So you would flip to the month and the day that you're in. Okay. Let me check the date really fast. It's April 14th today. So if you were doing morning prayer today on April 14th, you would read Psalm 106, verses 1 through 18 for the psalm. For your Old Testament lesson, you would read Numbers 8. And if you didn't want to read the whole chapter, you could just read verses 5 through 26, like it indicates there. And then for your second lesson, and lesson just means scripture passage reading, for the second lesson, for morning prayer, you would read Mark 9, verses 30 through the end of the chapter. Okay, so your daily office lectionary tells you which scripture passages you read on any particular day and even any particular prayer service that you're doing. Now, there's different ways of dividing up those lessons. So, for example, if you're only praying morning prayer every day, there's a way to divide up the lectionary so that you can go through it every 2 years instead of every 1 year, like it's mainly formatted for. But I'm not going to get into all that detail right now. The main thing I want you to know is that the daily office lectionary at the very back of the book, that's where you go to figure out which passages of scripture you read that day in that particular prayer service. Okay, so the first thing I want you to know is that you're not going to use most of the Book of Common Prayer if you're using it on a daily basis. The second thing is that you are going to use these 4 hotspots: the daily office section, the Book of Psalms, the collects of the Christian year, and the daily office lectionary. Those are the 4 sections of the Book of Common Prayer that you're going to find yourself using on a regular basis to pray daily, right? The third and final thing that I want you to know for this video is that within each prayer service, you're actually given a fair amount of options to choose from, which you might not expect. So if you grew up only ever praying, extemporaneously, and this is your first time using written prayers, then you're probably expecting to just be able to read through the service without any gaps or jumps. But that's not what you're going to get in the Book of Common Prayer. And that's because this is again, a comprehensive service book that's designed for regular use for years and decades. So they give you options within each prayer service, so you're not always praying the exact same things, right? Most of these options have to do with the seasons of the Christian year, okay? So you might pray a certain thing in Advent and then switch to a different option during Christmastide and a different option later during Lent, for example. That's what a lot of the options have to do with. But some of them are just for variety's sake. Let me just show you a few examples, okay? So let's jump to morning prayer, okay? If you're using the ACNA's Book of Common Prayer, then anytime you see the phrase "or this," which I've highlighted, that means that you're being given a set of options to choose from, and you're usually just going to choose one of them and move on. Okay, so here we see the opening sentences of Scripture that are said at the very beginning of the prayer service for morning prayer. So you're given 3 options that you can use at any time there. So you can just pick one, say it, and then keep moving, right? And it also even gives you even more options. It says on pages 27 through 29, you're given even more options that you can use, and those options are keyed to the different seasons and times during the church year. Okay, so that's just one example of a choice that you're given. You're also given the choice between whether you want to do the long introduction to the confession of sin or the short introduction to the confession. And then after you pray the confession of sin, you're given 2 different options to say if you're a priest, and then you're given 1 option to say if you're a deacon or a lay person. So there are various points in the prayer service where you're given options, and I would encourage you to just look through the whole service. Say it's your first time praying morning prayer, I would just look through the service to familiarize yourself with all of the different options that you're given, and I've highlighted some of them here as I'll scroll down. That way you're not thrown when you get to a certain set of options and you're like, wait, why does it say or this? I just prayed something. All right. That way you at least know the different things that you can that you're expected to choose from. And I would encourage you, if this is your first time using the Book of Common Prayer, don't overthink the choices. I would just encourage you to pick an option, stick with it until you're familiar with it before you go jumping around. Probably the only most important option in the daily office services is the things that you're only allowed to say if you're a priest or a bishop, which is mainly just what I just showed you, the giving the absolution of sin after the confession. That's something you're only supposed to do if you're a priest or a bishop. If you're a deacon or a lay person, you're supposed to pray this after the confession. That's really the only thing that comes to mind as the most important choice. For the rest of them, I would just encourage you to just pick one and keep moving. You will get more familiar with the choices so that eventually it'll just kind of become second nature, and you'll know, okay, I need to pick a canticle here. I will say, one of the reasons why I make these daily office booklets at Anglican Compass is to remove some of the difficulties in navigating the Book of Common Prayer's daily office services. Okay, so what I do in these booklets is I take some of the instructions that are written in the prayer book and I make them clearer. So I say things like, pick one of the following 2 things, just to try and clarify it a little bit more that, hey, you are being given a set of options here, just pick one and move on. I do other things to simplify the services as well, but if you do find the Book of Common Prayer a little bit daunting, but you still want to get into the habit of praying the daily office, which I highly, highly recommend that all Christians do, whether they're Anglican or not, then I would encourage you to check out the daily office booklets that I make, because I'm really trying to simplify things in order to make the daily office as accessible as possible to as broad of an audience as possible. But I will continue to do some of these videos just to walk you through how you do use the Book of Common Prayer on your own, because I think it's a helpful skill to have. The Book of Common Prayer is really an excellent, excellent resource to use to structure your own prayer life. And I think more people should know how to use it, again, whether they're Anglican or not. So I hope this video has been helpful. If you have any specific questions about the Book of Common Prayer that you'd like me to answer in future videos, please leave them in the comments. You can also use the contact form at anglicancompass.com. Those go right to my inbox. So I'm trying to collect people's questions on the BCP so that I can continue answering them in future blog posts and videos. So if you have anything that's on your mind that you'd really like to know in order to use the Book of Common Prayer more effectively, please ask me, and if I don't know the answer, I will at least find someone who does. All right, hope this has been helpful, and like I said, give me your questions and I will answer them soon.